Very good morning, it's Penuel the Black Pen. I want to discuss two things that Julius Malema had raised in his case with Afriforum. So Afriforum, which is an Afrikaans civil rights, I guess you'd call group, focuses more on protecting the rights of the minority group known as Afrikaans people, both white and other Afrikaans speaking people who assimilate with the culture. So it was set up to protect their rights in a country that is majority black, so to speak, especially after apartheid. Afriforum is a branch off from a workers' union known as Solidarity. I think Solidarity may have 250,000 members. Afriforum, on the other hand, has got, I think, over 350,000 members that contribute. This is white people, black people, colored people, people that identify with what Afriforum is doing as a movement. So Afriforum took Julius Malema to court because they claimed that his singing of the song Tubuli Punu incites violence and the killings, especially of farm owners. And we can only assume that when they talk about farm owners, they speak about white, potentially Afrikaans farm owners. In this country, unfortunately, we're not told these things on a regular basis, or we're not shown the data. We have a lot of black farm owners, whether it's small farms or big farms. There's a very great show that was flighting on, I think it was SABC. You can find it on YouTube as well. I'm not sure if it's called Agriculture or Farming Land or whatever, but it's a great show that has been showcasing black farmers that own lots of land and that are doing very, very well. We don't speak a lot about black farm owners. Almost feels like it's propaganda that's being pushed. Afriforum had fought before saying that there was a genocide in this country. They've put together, along with other people, documentaries that you can also find on YouTube about how white farmers are being killed in South Africa. The data is not updated as regularly as we'd like, but 2 years ago, the data came out that 74 people had been killed on farms in South Africa. 74 in a country that has over 20,000 people that are killed every year. 74 is a drop in the ocean. What's even worse, that 74 number doesn't specify whether it is white people or black people that have been killed. It also doesn't specify whether it is farm owners or farm workers that have been killed. And worse yet, it also doesn't specify if the killings are intentionally driven by people who are angry and racist, or if it may just be coincidental because people obviously are coming to rob the farm, or they've had fights with the farmer. Maybe the farmer beat them up and they're retaliating, whatever the case may be. But this is what we have to deal with in this country. A lot of propaganda driven by different interests, and everyone unfortunately emotionally gets sucked in. A lot of black people obviously are angry because of apartheid, because of colonization. So whenever they hear that something bad is happening to white people, they get very, very excited. On the other hand, with white people as well, when they see the corruption by the ANC and our government, when they see corruption by BEE beneficiaries, they also get excited because they're like, yeah, you can see letting black people run the country just doesn't work. So unfortunately, there's emotions across the country, and still we have this heavy, heavy racial issue that we've got. There's a high school in Gauteng this week that had racial issues as well. Panyaza Lesufi, who is the MEC, had to go and intervene. I believe they will be having a meeting this weekend with the parents. Very sad. We had a similar issue a year or two ago with EFF in Brackenfell in the Western Cape, where there was issues with, I think, the matric dance where only white kids had attended. So Julius Malema is in court defending this thing. Song Tubuli Punu, if you translate it, means shoot a boer or shoot an Afrikaner. Could argue shoot a white person. Ipunu is a boer, it's a white Afrikaans person. If you translate it directly, a boer in Afrikaans is a boer, rather in Afrikaans is a farmer. But to black people, when you say boer, you're speaking about any white, arguably a racist Afrikaans person. So Mauti Tubuli Punu, you talk about killing the white Afrikaans person. The reason the song was popular was because under apartheid, a lot of white people, a lot of white Afrikaans racist people were going around killing and exploiting and oppressing and beating up black people just for being black. Black people couldn't move around freely in this country. You needed to have a dompas. You couldn't be seen in the suburbs unless you had some type of permit that you worked there. You had to make sure that in terms of curfew, you were back in the townships or you were hidden. So black people have received or been the victims of extreme atrocities purely because they are black. Their crime being I'm dark-skinned. Therefore, the policies set by the apartheid government say that I'm less than human and I do not deserve the same rights as you. And we saw a lot of we have idiotic police and soldiers even today that are black. But back at that time, it was idiotic and racist white Afrikaans police and soldiers that were going around beating up and killing and torturing black people. So when this song came up, obviously it was to tell abantu abamnyama ukuthi hey baba ungasabi dubula ibhunu. You know, if you ever get a chance to retaliate, kill without flinching. Julius Malema in the court cases was asked, you know, would you kill? And he said, to defend my people, I wouldn't hesitate. I would definitely kill. You know, and obviously self-defense is allowed and is legal in this country. So I understand the emotions of where Julius is coming from. Julius was raised in politics from a young age, similar to ex-President Jacob Zuma. They grew up from a young age. You know, Jacob Zuma dropped out of school in grade 4. Julius Malema managed to finish school, but he was very politically active even throughout his schooling career. They were groomed and bred to be politicians in this country. And the two men that are highlighted in particular are potentially the best politicians we've had in this country. They are extremely entertaining from an entertainment perspective. They are funny. Obviously, Jacob Zuma can sing and dance very well. They are also very intelligent. You know, they have an ability of breaking down very complex matters into making them very simple. They understand propaganda. They understand strategy. They understand the undertones of the media. They understand the people that kind of run this country and the various tools that they use to ensure that certain people look bad or certain people remain oppressed and kept away from wealth and land in this country. Very entertaining, very intelligent, very inspiring. You know, they know how to trigger people at any given time, whether it is racist white people, whether it is black people that are poor and that are struggling, or whether it's clever blacks who obviously side on the side of whites because they are now the new privileged. And they say, oh, these guys are destroying our nation kind of situation. So I've had my issues with both of them. Huge fan of Jacob Zuma for various reasons. But I've also been a huge critic of him, especially when it comes to Inkandla. I did not have feelings about him when it came to the matter of Kwezi being raped. He did agree that he slept with her, but we still don't fundamentally know because I know the legal process is broken. We do not fundamentally know if he raped her or not. I've had issues with some of the people he's put into certain positions of power and the way that he's moved. I believe that Jacob Zuma is not much different to a Cyril or to any other black leader who has taken care of his own people. His own people just happened to be Indians and a lot of blacks, whereas Cyril and maybe Thabo Mbeki and maybe Nelson Mandela, their people happened to be a majority of white people who were still wealthy even during apartheid. But essentially, both groups were very much about taking care of their people. And the black masses in this country, by and large, remained the same. During apartheid and even now in our democracy, people are still poor, people are still struggling, people have lost their sense of education and ability to solve their problems. Julius Malema has been very great from the times when he was in the ANC Youth League, when he was saying he would kill for Jacob Zuma, to now. You know, now that he's set up the Economic Freedom Fighters after he was expelled from the ANC, and the great work he's done to get more young black people into parliament that have alternative voices, that speak with no fear, no favor, and that are very happy to criticize, especially the ANC government. Because for a long time, the ANC Youth League and other people couldn't speak out because it was like, well, these are kind of our parents and our elders and we can't slash them. Now we can see that they can do that without fear or favor. Obviously, it's being funded by people like the Motsepe family, other white families, and other black families as well. But look, it's the nature of politics. You need funding to be able to run a political party. So the two things I want to speak about that Julius Malema raised was, number one, Julius Malema spoke about the fact that white people were visitors, or white people are visitors in this country and on this continent. The second point that he spoke about was, he doesn't actually know if Patrice Motsepe and Cyril Ramaphosa are actually billionaires or if they are just imposters, essentially fronts for white monopoly capital. I'll start with the visitors part. Julius Malema claimed that white people in this country are visitors. The reason he says that is because he says in 1652, when white people decided to settle with Jan van Riebeeck leading the charge, Africa wasn't really a place they wanted to be. It was a halfway station to the east where they were going to fetch spices and other things that they wanted to trade, driven by the Dutch East India Company, which was a European company of Dutch, but obviously Europeans also got involved to trade. So they obviously found the Cape, and in the Cape they were like, look, we can stop here, relax, take a shower, have some pies, go to Ultra City. And I'm joking. But it was a place where they could stop and take a break because they were on a ship and it took a long time to get to the east. And then somewhere along the line, they were like, this place where we stop is pretty awesome and seems like it's pretty cool and the people are a bit weak. Maybe we can kind of dominate them. And as they decided to explore Southern Africa, they then found minerals. They found diamonds in Kimberley. They found gold, obviously, in Gauteng. And then obviously they saw this beautiful, beautiful land that we have. The coast. Our coast is beautiful from the east coast, Durban, Richards Bay, going down Port Shepstone, Margate, to the coast at the bottom, your Port Elizabeth, your East Londons, and then going into the Garden Route, places like your George, Knysna, and then obviously into Cape Town, etc. And they're like, no, we'd like to settle here. Our farmland is also pretty amazing, for farming crops, for farming livestock, etc. So they decided to settle. But Julius Malema says these people are visitors. And one of the things that some of us have spoken about before is this concept that white Europeans can try and get citizenship in Europe in various ways because of their descendants. Black Africans can't. We can only get citizenship here. We can't use our descendants, the people that or not our descendants, our forefathers, the people we came from. We can't get them to give us citizenship in Asia, in America, or in Europe, whereas white people can. A white European person who was born in Africa, who was born in South Africa, can say, my grandfather lived in London and apply for citizenship in that way. Africans can't do that. So you can kind of argue that, but these guys have a home somewhere else. Africans only have this place. What's important and what's very controversial and tricky and complex for people to understand is this concept of what we deem a foreigner. Number one, it seems that we've treated people as foreigners based on race, which is the exact same thing that colonizers used to oppress us. And we've now internalized and embraced that and used it to kind of fight off other good people. If you're white-skinned, we don't see you as one of us. If you're yellow-skinned and you're from China, Japan, Korea, those type of places, you're not one of us. If you're brown-skinned and you're from India or Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, you're not one of us. You must be dark. You must be dark-skinned. And we've bought into this race dynamic. We don't speak about generations. We don't speak about the concept of how many generations has your family been in this location? Whether the location is France, Spain, America, Brazil, Japan, how many generations have you been here? So that we can get an understanding of how deeply you know this place. We've got children who are 16 years old, who have only been alive for 16 years, who want to claim Africa as their home, versus an 80-year-old white man who has been here, who has maybe worked in the farms, maybe worked in the mines, who's helped many black people maybe get jobs or be upskilled or whatever. That 80-year-old man is seen as a foreigner by a 16-year-old black child who hasn't really lived a long time in this country, who hasn't really had a chance to contribute to this nation. Because we're not speaking about years and time and investment. What have you done for this land? Your family could have been here for 10 generations and you might find they've never done anything, but maybe go around killing people or stealing. But because you are dark-skinned, you feel like, but this is my land. And the white man who has maybe helped black people speak English, helped black people move overseas to go and find a better life, helped black people get a driving license, helped them get jobs, teach black people in various ways how to farm for themselves and given them pieces of land to say, go farm and do something for your family. We never look at them with any eye except you are white. And as long as you're white, you're not one of us and I hate you. And it speaks, unfortunately, to the small minds that a lot of us have because we don't have logic. We can't reason. We can't rationalize intelligently. Number two, it speaks to the power of propaganda. The propaganda peddled by politicians mostly. During apartheid and under colonization, obviously, the people that were being served were the British, specifically the monarch, the Queen Elizabeth. It was their people that they were sending out. People like your Cecil John Rhodes, people like Alan Gray, that were going out to say, go and find wealth for our nation. Go out there and find land and find resources and make the UK great. Make the United Kingdom and England, make it powerful. So when you get there, tell them you have to pledge allegiance to the Queen. go up and set statues, go out and teach English, go out and send missionaries to teach them Christianity, go out and implement our Roman Dutch law and get them to buy into what we stand for. And they peddle that aggressively. Afrikaans people who were somewhat of imgodoi, mongrels, mixed breeds, because they were a mix of the French, they were a mix of the Germans, they were a mix of the Dutch, and obviously white people don't want to speak about it because they raped black people in the Western Cape and they created a colored nation. And today an Afrikaans person, if you were to look into their DNA, you might find a bit of Bushman in there. You might find a bit of black in there. You might find some colored in there because they are mixed breeds. They were like, no, these British treat us like second-class citizens, and they decided to get together and fight back. They set up the Broederbond, they went and they set up the National Party, and they took over government. Once they took over government, what they did then is then set up this apartheid policy, which then really, really oppressed black people. The British oppressed black people by all means. We must never, ever, ever downplay the English and the British. As much as we love English now, as much as students of 1976 were saying they don't want Afrikaans, but they had no issues with English. The British killed and exploited and took from black Africans very much. The Afrikaners came later, and it's easy for us to be angry with them because they came later and they're the most recent oppressors that we saw now. They came in and they set up apartheid policy and they pushed black people off land aggressively. And they took up all this land and they wanted to try and enforce Afrikaans as a language of instruction and remove English. Black people got upset. Black people weren't getting upset because they were like, no, we actually want indigenous languages. We want this Zulu, we want Sotho, we want this Xhosa, we want this Swati. They said, no, we're happy with English. We don't want Afrikaans. So because of that propaganda, you had now become a British ambassador without realizing it. Obviously, we fast forward to today where we see a black government, which sadly still seems to be serving white interests. Nelson Mandela, when he came out of prison, became huge friends with the Oppenheimer family, became huge friends with, I made a video that I posted on YouTube yesterday and I posted on my Facebook this morning on Eric Sampson, who was a mining magnate, multi-billionaire from mining. Friends with Eric Sampson, friends with Dow Steyn. When he wrote The Long Walk to Freedom, he was staying at Dow Steyn's house. Dow Steyn is an insurance billionaire who spends his time between London, where he's one of the wealthiest people there, and he's also got a home in Steyn City. Steyn City is named after him because it is his development. And he's got Palazzo Steyn, which is a 250 million rand extravagant home with its own little waterfall out there that has been built off insurance money that has been collected by a bulk of black people that support his insurance companies. Dow Steyn is one of the people. There's a whole host of other white families, specifically Jewish families, that Nelson Mandela was very close with. So when he had to set policy, when he had to decide, when he had to make decisions, it was obviously never going to be at the exclusion and at the taking back of wealth from these friendly white people that had been working with him. And also, if you look at some of the Jewish white people that had worked with the ANC during the struggle, people like Joe Slovo, for example. So you see that there was certain people, and mostly wealthy people, that they were still sort of trying to protect in what they were doing. Thabo Mbeki came in after him, and it was more of the same. So it was a guy that was educated in England to come in and stand and understand economics and how money flows, etc., etc. So when he came in, he was like, look, let's bolster and boost the economy and ensure economic growth. You couldn't have had an economic growth if you were giving land back to blacks, if you were taking the economy and taking industries and giving them back to blacks, for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons would have been the fact that these black people are not skilled. They don't know how to run big mines. They don't know how to run big factories. They don't know how to export agricultural produce overseas. So if you gave them the economy, they were kind of going to fumble for a really long time trying to get to grips with what it means to actually run an economy. Number two, because of Europe, because of America, and because of the East, they know who they deal with when it comes to business. And they don't deal with black people. What would have happened would have been a repeat of what happened in Zimbabwe, where our country would have been sanctioned. Yeah, but you guys came and took the economy from whites. You came and took land like what happened in Zimbabwe from whites. And you're like, no. It was our land. We're just taking it back. No, can't do that. It's wrong. Happened in Zimbabwe. Robert Mugabe said this was our land. Cecil John Rhodes and the boys came and took our land from us aggressively, and we're taking it back, and we're chasing these people off. And the rest of the world said, nope, we're not going to hear from you. What you did is wrong. So we would have been sanctioned. unfortunately. So for those reasons, Thabo Mbeki and the guy said, look, let's just help these white people bolster and boost what they're doing, and we hope that it will trickle down and create jobs for black people. In came Patanat. Hey Baba, Patanat lekhanda umsholozi. And he said, nah, you know what? The economy's been doing well. Let's focus a lot on social welfare. He bolstered ARVs so that people that are HIV positive or have AIDS make sure that they live longer. He made sure that RTPs were prioritized, that grants were prioritized. And he looked like a black savior for a really long time. So it was like, no, man. Msholozi speaks our language, you know. Khulume Zulu, and then apinda gide. Hamba yekwa Zulu. Hey, he's a polygamist. He's got all these kids. You're like, no, this is actually an African leader. You know, and even in the way he criticized white people in parliament and elsewhere, you're like, this guy speaks our language. He understands the pain that we've been through. And even worse, because he is officially or formally undereducated, we feel like he is closer to being African because Africans essentially were not educated. And maybe he understands the black struggle even more than other people. Gained a lot of fans. Then you have to look at what happened during Zuma's term. We speak about 9 wasted years, which is more propaganda. It's propaganda from Cyril, Thabo Mbeki, Kgalema Motlanthe, and their type of faction, which protects rich whites mostly. They speak about 9 wasted years because they want to make sure that whatever progress Zuma had done gets completely dismantled. So Zuma, when he came in, spoke a lot of things that the incumbent rich white people didn't really like. It was like, look, we fund the ANC, we pay tax. You know, the guys before you, we kind of worked well with them. Why the hell? Who are you? Spoke about Johan Rupert. You know, and the cool thing about Umsholozi is, I don't even know if this is accidental or intentional. Whenever Umsholozi was attacked, he found a way to, like, out of his pocket, take out a mirror. And when this mirror, all of us that were watching, all of a sudden would be like, hey, the people that were criticizing him got to be seen as well. When the Guptas came in and they got the mine and they got the deals to supply coal at Eskom, and then the whites media, News 24, Mail and Guardian, all these white media houses came and said, look at what's happening with the Guptas. Zuma came with this mirror and said, look at the people who are criticizing me. And when we looked at them, we were like, so the Guptas are not supplying all the coal. They're supplying maybe 3%, which is a small percentage. Oh, okay. Yeah, but the Guptas are Mandia. They're not from here. Yeah, they must go. But it's 3%. Who's supplying the other 97? And that's when, for the first time, we figured out there are actually suppliers to Eskom that we're not aware of. And a lot of these suppliers were suppliers during apartheid. A lot of them are still white people. And worse, they have what's called evergreen contracts. These contracts that have no expiry date, they will supply coal forever. And you're like, no, man, come on. Not only that, we found out that the Guptas were going to be supplying coal at a cheaper price than these guys. So these guys are actually making a hell of a lot of money. And no one has ever called them to task. Instead, we're being told that Jacob Zuma has been captured by these Guptas who are supplying a small percentage. Not only did Zuma do that, Zuma then also unearthed what was happening at SAA. He placed Dudumieni, who at some point was accused of being his side chick. We don't know. We don't really care. She came and she also showed that only 3% of the suppliers to SAA are black. And SAA is a state-owned enterprise by government. And it should be the place that is pushing for black economic empowerment. As enshrined back then when we were speaking, according to the constitution, of the redistribution of the land and the wealth to the majority of this nation. How is SAA doing that? We found out that the Oppenheimer family have got its own sort of port at the airport where they get to kind of do what they want. Like, what? What? He went and replaced Hlaudi Mutswaneng at the SABC, who came and said 90% local content, and people fought. How do you fight for a person that's saying be proudly you and proudly play your stuff so that you can get paid? Hlaudi did a really great interview with MacG on Podcast and Chill. You can find it on YouTube, where he's explaining his ideology. And I got tired of talking. I don't talk radical economic transformation. I was doing it. I was transforming and saying, oh, our local artists are hungry. Play their music so they'll get paid. Our local productions are hungry. Play them. So let them get paid. Obviously, part of what came there was Ukuku Zuma. Ukuku Zuma is Jacob Zuma's daughter. Her production company getting to play Uzalo as the years have come by, we've now seen Durban Jen. We've seen now Umashlomo, the wife on Showmax. She's done really well, really well. Black lady, obviously nganyam sholozi, so we'll think nepotism. But you watch the shows. Those are good shows. Jacob Zuma used to be attacked by Julius Malema in Parliament. Babaga tutuzani. And he was saying, I've got over 20 kids. I've got over 20 kids. And one of my kids, Ututuzani, is interested in business. And he's shown that he has a knack for it. Are you saying that my son should be disadvantaged just because his father is Jacob Zuma? You can point out where I've given him favor. I haven't. You can point out where he's getting special treatment. He hasn't. He just happens to be my son. And for that reason, you want to crucify him. What I learned from that process, or from that whole Ubabaga Tutuzani, was that Julius Malema was just very hurt. He felt that Jacob Zuma was like a father to him. Both of us are seen as undereducated. Both of us have been in the struggle since we were kids. We both kind of speak the same language. On platforms, I had said that I'm willing to die and kill for you, Jacob Zuma, my father. And now when the opportunities for the economy and for a chunk come in, you don't give them to me, your adopted son, in the struggle. You give it to your real biological son, and I get snubbed. When I'm being attacked by the ANC elders, they're telling me to shut up and what. When I'm fighting for you, you don't stand up for me. You don't say, as my son, I will fight for this boy. He is mine. And I felt like that was pain coming through Babaga Tutuzani, because he was saying, Wau Babaga Malema, Babaga Julius. But you proved that you're not a father to me. You're willing to sell me to the wolves. That's not important, and I'm going off tangent. So Julius Malema says white people are visitors. And my whole thing was, at which point do you become indigenous to this place? The example that he uses, which people found very funny, was Africa is a country. That's one of the things he said. It's white people that came and imposed borders and broke us up. But Africa is a country. It's similar to us coming to a province, KwaZulu. And then someone in Ukasela looks at abantu that come from Engutu and say, no, you are foreigners, what are you doing here? And you're like, but this is KwaZulu, Baba, this is all our land. Just because a white person decided to name this place Newcastle and another person decided to name this place Engutu, doesn't mean this is not the same home. This is the same land of KwaZulu. That Ushaga came and then said, iWaZulu la, indawo yenu. And now you're going to tell me I'm a foreigner in Newcastle. I mustn't get a tender here. I mustn't come set up home when I'm also Zulu njengawe. Do the same thing when you look at tribalism, where we're saying we're one South Africa, but then you go to the Eastern Cape and Amaxhosa, you Mzulu, and you hear Pedi and Tswana people, ooh, Muzulu, you ha. And you're like, but we're one people. Who told you that we are different? White people came through colonization and they set up these borders. I made a video about this before, where the French came and said, I like this place, we'll call it Cote d'Ivoire. I like this place, we'll call it Senegal. These are our colonies. And then the Portuguese came and said, oh, Angola, Mozambique. And then the British came and said, oh, I like Kenya, I like South Africa. And they came and they set up these colonies. And today we've kind of agreed to these colonies. And that's why we call other Africans foreigners. Julius Malema says Africa is one country. These borders were imposed on us. It's not something we chose. And he says when white people come and they tell us that, yeah, but this guy is a foreigner. It's like, you can't say that because we live in one house. We live in one house. My Zimbabwean brother is just in another room. I'm in another room. It can't be that when my Zimbabwean brother comes into my room, I say, hey, who are you? We're in the same house. But one of my comebacks to Julius Malema is, why is Africa one house, but then he sees other continents as other places? That means he's kind of embraced this breaking up that the same white people have done. Why can't he extend and say Africa is one home, the world is one home? I know it's something that's very sensitive now because of our history, because we're angry, because the Europeans don't want to share with us, because the Americans don't want to share with us, because the Asians seem to come with sneaky loans that they're trying to use to neo-colonize us. I understand why we have this thing of, let's protect a little bit of dignity that we have. But why can't it be one world? Why can't we go and settle in Spain and France and Brazil and Argentina? Why must we be confined to Africa? Why must I constantly feel like I must be in Africa? I want to explore. I want to be an explorer like Christopher Columbus, like Cecil John Rhodes. Why can't I explore and settle in Uruguay and go and build a nation there? Why? Why must I be confined mentally to this African continent when maybe my wealth and my destiny is in Hong Kong? Maybe the love of my life is in Russia. It's because, unfortunately, we've bought into this propaganda. And the propaganda works, of course, when you're a politician because you want black Africans to support you. Number one, to be a president of this country. Number two, to be the head of the African Union so that you can consolidate power. Once you've consolidated power, what happens is that anytime China, Japan, Korea, India wants to come into Africa, anytime Germany, France, Spain, England want to come into Africa, anytime America, Canada, Mexico, Brazil, Argentina want to come into Africa, they have to go through you and you become the power broker. You get to choose if McDonald's comes in or if Paris Baguette from Korea comes in or if Mercedes-Benz or if Tata is coming in. You get to choose because you become the ultimate gatekeeper, but you need the people on the ground to buy into you. That's how people sell out and become captured. It's from me saying, I will now own a ZCC church, or I will now control the Zulu people, or I will now look after the ANC faction. So whenever white people want to access this space, they come through me as a king of this land, or as a leader of this political party, or as the leader of this church. I will then, Patrice Motsepe, agree to let my church members join Time Bank. I will then agree that you can come and farm on my Ngonyama Trust land, but it must come through me and I must get a slice. And I must sit on your board. That's how it works. It's propaganda. White people, by and large, in this country are still being pushed with propaganda by the people that were running apartheid. That's why they join Afriforum. That's why they vote for the Freedom Front Plus and the DA. Because they believe that the issue in this country is blacks. What roads have blacks built? What universities have they built? What economy have they built? We built it, us white people. We came to this random barbaric bush of a land and we built civilization. We taught them English. Today they boast in their Mercedes-Benz and they drink Hennessy at Conca, and it's all because of us. They earn nice salaries because they work for our companies. What have they built? What great industry have they built? And it's middle class and poor white people that are fed this propaganda by wealthy whites through various media spaces, through various churches like the NG Kerk, of which a lot of the members, they are very racist. And everywhere they look, they're like, oh, a black person hijacked. It was black people that are corrupt. Oh, look at the tenders. Look at the potholes. It's blacks. Blacks, blacks, blacks. There's a nice little video of a white man saying, blacks are a problem, bro. Come on, you gotta admit it. That's the propaganda that they see, and it's being pumped every single day where they are. Who is top of the crime stats? Blacks. Who's top of the rape stats? It's blacks. Who is being drunk everywhere? It's blacks. Look at Mocha Love. The blacks. Who is dirtying the place? Taxi ranks. Blacks. Come on, the blacks are a problem, bro. On the other hand, you've got black people that are being pumped with propaganda on the other side. The reason you guys don't have land, it's the whites. The reason you guys don't have the economy, it's the whites. The reason your grandmother is struggling, it's whites. Vote ANC because whites. The reason ESCOM, whites. Look at these white people sitting in restaurants during the week while your mother is a domestic worker and your father is a gardener. It's the whites. White people have taken everything from you. Today we worship a white Jesus. Whites. Why is this country fucked? Why are blacks drunk? Why are blacks smoking nyaupe? Why are blacks so dirty? Whites. It's because of the whites. So then black people, the middle class and the poor are like, the issue is whites. But who's peddling this propaganda? It is wealthy black people at the top who are the ANC, EFF, and other officials who live in these white DA-run suburbs, who send their kids to top white schools in the country. The Hiltons, Michael House, St. John's, St. Stithians, Bishops, their kids are there. And they're these black elite that are politicians and members of parliament laughing with the whites. Yo, you know what I saw with my son, as he was playing golf. Those same black people that are pushing this propaganda are there with the same white people that are pushing propaganda to white people. They're having deals. Cyril Ramaphosa and Ishanduga, which now sits under Ipembani. Ipembani has got a property deal with Remgro, Johan Rupert. Jacob Zuma had a huge friend in Charles, Senegal, who owns a huge farm in Pongolo. A huge farm. He's built roads there. He's got He's got a dam, sugar and other farming activities. Tito Mboweni's great mates with the Van Zyl family in Limpopo that have ZZ2 and pump tomatoes and onions and all kinds of other things. That's how it works. If you look at the boards of Discovery, Jewish Adrian Gore, if you look at Aspen, Stephen Sard, Jewish, you look at the black people that are sitting, Judy Dlamini, Sizwe Ngasana was sitting on the board of First Rand, which comes from FNB and these Afrikaans people that we call the Stellenbosch Mafia, Laurie Dippenaar, GT Ferreira, Paul Harris. You follow the money, read the financial statements and see these things. See these things, see the boards that these people are sitting on. They are living comfortable lives, but they're telling you to hate whites. And on the other hand, whites are being told by rich whites, white nurses, cops, white people that are struggling, that are poor, are struggling, but the same rich whites are telling them, "Ja, hey, hierdie fucking swartes, hey, hulle is nie goeie nuus, hoor. Hey, hulle." And we buy into this propaganda because our brains are small. So my concern with what Julius Malema was saying is it's more propaganda. He's a career politician. He is in the business of maximizing votes and power. He is not in the business of empowerment and upliftment. Because if he was, he'd be telling black people, stop going to school. Go to the land and work the land. Go to the factories and go become an apprentice. Young as 5 years old, 10 years old. If your mother's working in a factory, go spend time with her and acquire skills. Go to farms and begin learning how to farm. He'd be pushing ahead, not in parliament, not in parliament and through court cases and the law and, excuse me, my lord and your honor. He'd be saying, guys, go take over the land. There's land all over South Africa. And go work that land. And we will protect you. We will set up an army. We will fight whatever police and soldiers they send to you because this is your land. He has an ability to work with white people. He's working with white funders in the EFF. So he doesn't hate whites. He's gone to England to go and speak. I think it was at Oxford. He's comfortable speaking to whites. But obviously he speaks a language. And I've said that language is God because if a person says the things you want to hear, it psychologically colonizes your brain. And you're like, yes, I think this is the leader we need. We see Unhlanhla Lux now with Operation Tudula, speaking the words you want to hear. Foreigners must go. Hey, Baba, do you live in Hillbrow and Yeovil? Do you know who to? And he says the things you want to hear. But do you see his life? Do you see who he's with? I myself, and this is why I've said, and people are not getting it because I see people constantly criticizing me in comments. I am not a black leader. I'm not here to uplift blacks. I tried for maybe 30 years of my life to do what I can for black people. Educate as I'm doing now. We set up the Buy Black movement because I thought if we get black people to buy from other black people, the same way Jews buy from Jews, the same way Muslims buy from Muslims, the same way Afrikaans people, I was like, if black people can buy from black and black people can work for black, it's game over. If all of you stop buying from ShopRite and overnight buy from one of my mentors, Kulufelo Maponya, buy from 2U Foods, ShopRite's business collapses. And then Umaponya can then go and buy up all the ShopRites and turn them into a black thing. If all of us take our money out, it's sad to mention this example, but we put them in VBS, the Vendor Building Society, that mutual bank. We all put our money in VBS and we take it out of ABSA and FNB. VBS can then go and buy up ABSA and FNB and Standard Bank and Nedbank and Capitec. And if you guys take away your labor, because a lot of these companies, your ShopRites, your Peps, these big mines, these big farms, they rely on your labor. So if you're like, no, I want to work for a black auditing firm, accounting firm, I want to work for Inkonki or Isizwe Nsaluba. But you guys won't do that because you're captured by money. And because you're obviously trying to move out the township and get as far away from other blacks as possible. You don't care about blacks. You don't. Every black person that's complaining is only complaining because they haven't gotten to the top yet. Once they get to the top of Balula and their kids go to fancy schools, they don't care anymore because gumnandi. Sipping coffee at Tasha's, in Santon, in Rosebank, William Nicol there, Bryanston. When you look at the coffee shops that are there, people that sit at the Woolies cafes. If you go to Cape Town, Mhlanga, Palito, that life is lucrative. You're wearing soft jerseys and you're sipping espressos and you're having fat laughs with your mates and you're discussing share portfolios and, oh my gosh, did you see what Malema said? Did you hear what Cyril said? And you have fat laughs with your mates. That's what every black person is striving to be isolated away from the rot. You only complain because you're poor. I don't want to save black people. I want to save my people. My people are people that see me as a leader and say, Peno, let's move. I am white. I am black. I am Afrikaans. I am Chinese. I am Indian. I hear what you're saying, bro. You're probably speaking that same non-racialist kak Mandela was saying. But Mandela didn't tell you a full story of the reason why he's non-racialist is because his mates and his funders are now white. He was trying to get you to be non-racialist, but you're struggling. You can't be non-racialist when you're struggling. I'm privileged. Maybe that's why I can say I'm non-racialist. But I went to a white school. I've went to a great white university. I've got white friends who care about me, who like me, who tomorrow, if I struggle, they will feed my kids. So I must say, fuck those whites. And I must focus on black people who don't give a fuck about me. My brother's car's been stolen twice in Joburg. My car, I've had 2 cars stolen in Joburg as well. By blacks. There's video footage. I must go and fight for those blacks. For the blacks that are raping our sisters. For the blacks that are filthy, MTN. The blacks that when you try to speak to them, when you ask them for donations, they're like, usu pushiri. Why you funi malgit? I'm like, nah, fuck those guys, man. Fuck those guys for real. Fuck racist whites and fuck idiotic blacks. I am not interested. I want to work with visionary people who understand that, guys, we have work to do. And if that means I'm captured, if it means I'm a sellout, I don't give a fuck. Where have you been my whole life? You don't fucking know me. You don't know what I fucking eat. You don't know where I sleep. You don't know what keeps my kids going. I don't owe you bullshit. You don't fucking vote for me. I don't take any of your tax money. So I don't owe you anything. You've never taken out your whole salary and said, Penal, here, please help me. To have the fucking audacity to tell me that I must do for you. Who are you? You're nothing and no one to me. Just a person making noise because we share the same skin color. There are so many black leaders back in the day, kings and chiefs, who were selling blacks to slave masters. There are black people today who are selling blacks to go and be exploited somewhere else. There are black people that are killing blacks. Black people killing each other over taxi routes, over tenders, over political titles and roles. Those are blacks. But like I said earlier, because you've got a small brain, you'll be like, but it's because of whites. Fuck that, man. There are black people who have managed to work hard every day and who have taken themselves out of poverty from a village or from a township and built something. Why do we never speak about them? Why don't we blame whites? Oh, that black person is successful because of whites. Why don't we blame whites for black success, for black work ethic, for blacks that actually put in the work and they pull themselves out of misery? Why don't you blame whites for that and say, oh, look, this black person is hardworking because of whites? You only want to isolate the negative to whites. It's the same reason some of us struggle with religion. Every good thing, oh, it's God's grace. God is so amazing. Look at this beautiful land. All the bad things are isolated to Satan. This God-created concept of Satan, all the bad things, the mosquitoes and the volcanoes and the rape, that's Satan. That's not God. No. God only is responsible for the good stuff. That's a lazy mind. It's a very lazy mind. You have to look within and you have to take accountability for your shit. Yes, white people by and large don't feel at home in Africa. Some of them do. A lot of them have to contribute. Especially they have to carry the cross of their forefathers. I'm Zulu. If Zulus had oppressed people in this country and we knew Zulus had committed atrocities and killed Abesutu and raped the Bedis and taken the land of Ramaphosa, I'd have to carry that. I'd fight and be like, get the fuck out of here. Those were my forefathers, it wasn't me. But I'd have to carry that cross and be like, I will try my best to work with you guys. And let's dismantle tribalism. But I will try. Because I happen to be Zulu. So the Afrikaners and those guys, they must not fucking act ignorant about our history. They must embrace it and be like, I hear you. You're very right. Atrocities. But let's move. Speak about them, complain, whine, but let's move. Let's work, Baba. We're trying to make this country fucking work. That's what needs to happen in this country. That's what needs to happen on this continent. I said in my video about foreigners that we have to have a discussion about borders. Are we removing them? Are we changing them? Are we removing some and keeping others? Do we have similar ambitions to Rwanda, to Nigeria? Do the Tunisians like us? Do the Moroccans actually see us as one of their own? Maybe not. Then maybe let's keep the borders because those people don't want to work with us. But maybe the Kenyans see us as one. So let's make sure that it's easy access to Kenya. let's make sure that there's easy access to the DRC. But if the DRC says, you don't speak Francais, you don't speak the French, you're like, okay, maybe you guys are not one of us. And we move forward. The second part I want to speak about that Julius Malema spoke about was this concept that Patrice Motsepe and Cyril Ramaphosa may not be billionaires. One of my favorite things I used to do during varsity and even after was tracking rich lists. Forbes, great rich list. Bloomberg, Michael Bloomberg used to be the mayor of New York, dollar billionaire, Bloomberg television, whatever. I used to track and I used to study, and obviously you look at the South African lists, you look at Stephen Saad, Gus Attridge, Christo Visa, Johan Rupert, Nikki Oppenheimer, Patrice Motsepe, used to be on the cover, was on the cover of Forbes, whole host of billionaires in this country, mostly white, of course. We don't speak much about the Indian billionaires, for example, your Vivian Reddy's. I'm not sure how wealthy the Sheikh family is as well. There's some wealthy Indian families in this country. We don't speak much about the Chinese. A lot of them don't list their assets, so you wouldn't know how wealthy they are. Then I went onto the continent and I learned about Muhammad Al-Amoudi, who was also wealthy in Saudi Arabia, Aliko Dangote in Nigeria, along with Mike Adenuga, Femi Otedola. You learn about the Sawiris family, the Mansours. You learn about the Doji family in East Africa, Mo Doji, very articulate guys, done great. They're great industrialists in the East. We learned about Isabel dos Santos, who became wealthy through her father's connections, who was the president of Angola. She's in a lot of shit now because when the new regime took over, they basically being accused of corruption and nepotism and all these things. She was the wealthiest woman in Africa. She also simultaneously was the wealthiest woman in Portugal. We've got Wendy Applebaum in this country, and then you go overseas and you learn about, obviously, Bill Gates. Now we've got Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk. You learn about the Walmart family. Walton. I think it's Walton. Is it Walton? Anyways, the Walmart family. You go to Asia, you learn about your Jack Ma's, the guys that founded Tencent. I don't know if it's Li Ka-shing. Used to be the wealthiest guy in China for the longest time. You go to Europe, obviously, and you learn about some of the billionaires there. You find out that some of the billionaires are actually Indians. The Mittal family. There's a Ambani family in India and also in Europe. Obviously, we know some of the big brands, some of the BMW, Mercedes, some of those families in Europe, etc. I was a fan, and in November, I think it was 2011, I decided I want to make 100 million rand in wealth by the age of 50, and that's going to be my ambition, and I pushed. And as I pushed, I carried on looking at the rich lists, and I carried on studying, and I was like, whatever. Over the last couple of years, these lists have been looking very wonky. As my knowledge of money gets more and more intelligent, I realize, especially when you look at Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, especially when you study luxury goods, I'm a visual artist. I paint and I draw, something that people may not know. And I used to ask, what makes one painting worth 5 million when a similar painting is worth 5,000 rand? What makes this Louis Vuitton t-shirt worth $1,000, but the same quality t-shirt by Impincham Utamsang is $50? Why? And I got to learn that it's all about the human mind and your ability to convince human minds. And in doing that, it's part of the reason why I've done the social experiment saying that I'm God. Because it's a social experiment. I want to be a luxury good. I want to compete with the people that have colonized your mind and see if I can hack it. Because if I can hack your mind, like Elon Musk does on Twitter, I can convince you that Bitcoin is overpriced or underpriced. I can convince you that a Tesla is the most hectic electric car in the world. I can convince you that you must wear Polo or Pringle, or Dolce & Gabbana or Gucci. I can get influencers like your Bonang and Somizis to make you want to wear Louboutins and floss and want to get this, 7A or 12A weave, wig. I want to hack your mind. And I want to influence how you think and how you reason and what you think is right and what you think is wrong. That you're comfortable being called Moses because you were Christian. You were colonized by the Christians, and you're not Ahmed because you weren't colonized by the Muslims. I want you I want to be able to convince you why Vladimir Putin is right and Ukraine is wrong, and why America shouldn't be meddling with bullshit that's got nothing to do with them, because no one has ever held them to account for bombing innocent women and children in Iraq and Afghanistan. Barack Obama and George Washington were not taken to the International Criminal Court, but they wanted to take Robert Mugabe. Why is that? Why does Bill Gates have such a huge say at the World Health Organizations? Because he funds them. Why does he have such a huge say at the United Nations? Do people know that these fact-check websites like Africa Check is funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, so they'll never say anything bad about them? Do you know that the science textbooks that you read are funded by certain people? Do you know that most journalists or journalist institutions are funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation? Do you know that? I want to hack your mind, and I want to steal it from the people that have colonized it through education, through the church, through mainstream media, social media. And I want to be the source of those things for you. So in realizing that, I realized that even the concept of money and the value of money is all about human perception. I want to make an example. Melrose Arch is a great piece of property close to Sandton, between Sandton and Rosebank in Johannesburg. Started by a father and son duo. To date, I think they currently make a turnover of 1.5 billion rand a year from rent. Very small piece of land. If you've ever been to Melrose Arch, if you ever get a chance to come to Joburg, small piece of land, 1.5 billion rand a year. The Zulu monarch owns Ingonyama Trust, which has 3 million hectares of land. Huge. It's a third of KwaZulu. They make 118, I think, million rand a year. 118 million versus 1.5 billion. When this piece of land can do the same comparison with Sun City, a piece of land that makes billions. You know, rest in peace, Saul Kerzner. Another Jewish titan that's done well for this country and for the world at large. Who decides that this flat in Sandton is going to cost R1 million? Meanwhile, a similar flat, somewhere else that's less desirable is going to go for 200,000. And for the same R1 million, you can get 50 hectares of land. Or you can get a very small plot at Camps Bay. Who decides that? When you study economics like I did, and they tell you economics 101, it's supply and demand. You know, it's a matter of willing buyer, willing seller. That's all psychological mumbo jumbo to convince you of certain things. Similar to the borders. Across this fence, this is South African, it's South African law. Across that fence, you're in Zimbabwe, it's Zimbabwean law. If you've ever watched a lot of these thrillers with Denzel and Jason Bourne, Matt Damon, you see the Americans that when they're being chased in a certain country, they're being chased and they're running to the American embassy. Because as soon as you step into the American embassy, you are now on foreign soil and American laws apply to you. You can commit a crime in South Africa. As soon as you cross the American embassy, the South African law no longer comes into effect. It's a psychological thing. And these terrorists, and they stop chasing and they keep quiet because they know they can't cross this line. I've seen a picture of a donkey that is tied to a plastic chair. And the donkey won't move because in its head it's told that it's being fastened. There's a leash. Doesn't know that it can pull the chair because it's psychologically captured. I do the same exercise whenever I'm traveling and there are no cars and you see the robot is red and there are no cars. I drive because I'm intelligent enough to know that these robots were set up to control traffic. But they are not God. They are not supreme. If I can see that there are no cars and it's safe, I go. But obviously when you're dealing with small minds, you broke the law. You can't do that. Oh my gosh, you didn't have your seatbelt. And I'm like, your mind is captured by laws. The same laws that get challenged that we've seen with Julius and Oppenheimer, the lawyer that's representing Afriforum. Debate. Something that was legal is illegal. Apartheid was legal, it's illegal. Slavery was legal, it's illegal. All because someone said, let's cross the line. So someone chooses the value of something. Someone decides today that, this picture on the internet, we're now going to call it an NFT, a non-fungible token, and it's going to be worth $100,000. Yesterday it was worthless. This artwork today is worth 500. It's pretty. But now we've heard that Penwell was actually the son of a king. He's actually a descendant of Mansa Musa, the wealthiest man to ever live, who I think is a fictional story. He's a descendant. And you know, Penwell was a soldier, and when he speaks about this painting, it's because he painted it in his mother's blood after his mom. Oh, a little story. The story is so amazing. It goes from 500 Rand to $10 million. Do you know the story of the Mona Lisa? Your mind has been captured. So when you're told that a certain mine is worth $1 billion, you agree because who told you? Forbes told you. Forbes has won the right to own your mine from a financial perspective. Bloomberg has told you. And then it gets filtered down into all these other publications that suck the fucking dicks of Forbes and Bloomberg. They get to tell you who's rich and who's not. They get to tell you who's poor and who's not. We look at stats SA. We look at all of these things are people's ideas. They're people's ideas. Oh, 60% of people are HIV positive. 5% of university graduates. Oh, do you know 20% of politicians? Yesterday, someone brought back an old tweet by SABC News that said 88% of SAPS employees are HIV positive. I was like, what the fuck? Was this never called into account? I went back and I researched, as I always do, and I saw Africa Check had done research, and they were like, no, this is incorrect. This is actually incorrect. They were saying 88% of people that are HIV positive in the SAPS are on ARVs, and it got lost in translation. And SABC News was never held to account. A stat like that goes out. Donald Trump went onto a podium and said he condemns the genocide of white farmers in South Africa because someone convinced him. Big American president with the CIA, Central Intelligence Agency, and all this access to information and knowledge. And he decides to buy into this bullshit that someone had told him. And they believed it. Someone tells you Shaka Zulu was this tall, athletic black man. Oh, Mkopozi. And you're like, oh, and you believe it. Get all these pictures of Jesus. He had long hair and his eyes. And, I've seen the picture of the Last Supper by Leonardo da Vinci. I know what Jesus looks like. Someone told you that. So what Julius Malema was speaking about is this concept of wealth. If you've ever watched Dragon's Den on BBC, someone comes and they say, hi, Dragons, I'm Penwell. This is my company. I'd like to give you a 10% stake. I'm looking for £500,000 in valuation. Valuation is part of the scam that is used by the finance world to kind of steal money from other people. Another scam is compound interest. Another scam is inflation. Inflation allows governments, reserve banks, whatever, to steal your wealth. You put 1,000 Rand in the bank next year, because of inflation, it can only buy 900 Rand worth of goods. In 10 years' time, it can only buy 300 Rand worth of goods. The same 1,000 Rand because of what they call inflation. And you guys have believed that because the economists and the experts and the president and they all told you that this stuff works. But it's psychological colonization of your mind so they can steal wealth from you. If you give them your piece of land, if you give Patrice your piece of land, a hectare of land, it's yours, no one really knows you. Patrice goes and he fences this and he puts Motsepe holdings on there. And he tells the country, we have bought a piece of land, it's a hectare, it's amazing. We're looking to do great future work on this piece of land. We're going to list it on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, on the London Stock Exchange. All of a sudden, that piece of land you sold to him for maybe 50,000 Rand is now worth 500 million. Oh, Motsepe has bought, it's a Motsepe land. Did you see the signage? That's how it works. Kanye West came out saying he's worth $3 billion, $6 billion. At some point they said, I think it's Kendall. Is it Kendall Jenner? This Jenner lady who's got a cosmetics product was on the cover of Forbes. Billionaire. And there was this argument. Is she self-made? Is it because she's a Kardashian? Then it came out that no, the valuation was wrong. It's not actually worth a bit. Who decides? Forbes and Bloomberg and these guys decide and they thumb suck and they look at listed. Look, it's the best way to measure, obviously, the exchanges, but it's all bogus. So Angloval, which was founded by the Harsoff and the Manel families, they came and they built this huge empire, Anglo Gold, and they ended up investing in a whole range of other industries. They befriended Augustine Motsepe, Patrice's father, and they had a good relationship with the family. And as time went on, Patrice went and he studied law at Wits. He went and he became a partner at Bowman Gilfillan, and then he decided to venture into mining, starting off with a mining services company. And then later on, he got an opportunity because BEE was the buzzword. And the Manel Harso family were like, hey, we're friends with this family. We like them. We trust them. In the same way, other big mining families were friends with Cyril from back in the day. They were like, we want this guy to be our BEE choice of partner. In the same way, the Gupta family handpicked Mzwanele Manyi, who happens to be the spokesperson of the Jacob Zuma Foundation. They handpicked him to hand over ANN7 and the New Age to him. They handpicked. So they handpicked Patrice Motsepe and they said, we're going to give this guy. And there's something called vendor financing. Vendor financing is when I have a company, I want to give you a stake of it, but you don't have the money. So I say, it's fine. I'll give you a loan to buy a stake in my company. And then you will pay off the loan in dividends. That's what the Guptas got from Eskom, from Brian Molefe as well when they got the mine. It's nothing unique. It's nothing new. It was highlighted when the Guptas got it. But then, like I said, Msholozi shone this mirror. And we saw that this has been happening everywhere. It's been happening everywhere. So Patrice Motsepe got a chunk of a mine, got this nice BEE vendor financing, and then overnight they were like, oh, he stumbled upon, literally a gold mine. And, his mine was valued at these great prices, and he managed to raise more funding and financing and whatever. And the question becomes, did Motsepe build anything? Does he know how to value something, or is it because he owns a stake of certain white wealth that they say his wealth will be worth this much? Can he tomorrow say, fuck all white people, fuck all of you, I support land grabs? Will his value be worth the same, or will it be worthless overnight? Zimbabwe was one of the biggest economies on the African continent. Then Mugabe chased white farmers off, and overnight the Zim dollar was worthless. Overnight people didn't want to trade with them. They had the same land, they had the same resources, they had the same farms, they had the same everything. But overnight, the country is impoverished. Overnight. Steinhoff, wealthy company. Someone decides to leak a story about dodgy accounting, and overnight, the value plummets. Where did the money go? Did the company get bombed? Was the building gone? No, the buildings are still there. The factories are still there. The production is still happening. Someone just decided to tell you a story, and you devalue the stock based on that story. VBS, African Bank, everything. One scandal. Oh, Java raped Lady Zama. Oh, no one wants to book him. He is now worthless. Yesterday he was big, BET award winning Java. Hey. Perception management. Is Patrice Motsepe a dollar billionaire? We don't know. That's what Forbes and Bloomberg tells us. That's what South Africa tells us. But what Julius Malema is trying to highlight is, can Patrice Motsepe withdraw $1 billion? Chances are no. How much cash can he withdraw? And is that his cash, or is it as collateral based on the assets that he has? Because I made the example, you can own an asset. I can own a car. But if my car is not an Uber, it doesn't make money for me. It's actually a liability. I have to service it. I have to pay insurance. I have to take it to the car wash. That car is a liability. It costs me. The next person's car is an asset because it's an Uber. It makes money for him. Patrice Motsepe can sell me his mine, but it's me. Who am I? It's going to be worth less. Unless if I can tell a great story of, no, we've uncovered more platinum deposits, we've dug deeper, and tell the story and convince the powers that be, these wizards that we call business journalists, or that we call economists or other financial experts, or we convince the banks. Bitcoin was nothing more than monopoly money until the banks bought in and they said, I think we can use this to steal money away from the middle class and the poor. So let's formalize it. Let's agree. Let's say, we now accept Bitcoin. Ooh, value skyrockets. Elon Musk sends one tweet as one of the wealthiest men in the world. Bitcoin plummets. Where did it go? Where did the money go? Where's the value? Devalued based on nothing but human perception and human minds. We've been told Cyril Ramaphosa is a billionaire. And Julius said, if he's a billionaire, why is he not paying salaries of the SAP, of the ANC? We heard last year that Cyril Ramaphosa fired retrenched a lot of his workers on his farms. Why? If he's got so much money, he's talking about job creation. He can't even create jobs on his own farms. Where is his wealth? These guys were given BEE shares that had terms and conditions. One of them, like I said, was vendor financing, that we will give you a loan for these shares, but you will pay us off over time. If the value of those shares gets less, you might find that the BEE shareholder ends up owing the company more than whatever they're worth. So they end up with a negative net worth. Number two, we're giving you these shares because you must protect the reputation and the value and the brand of this company. You can't, Cyril, as a shareholder of MTN and Standard Bank and Liberty and McDonald's, you can't go out there and support land grabs because it's going to devalue your shares. You can't go out there and improve the quality of public education and public healthcare. We don't want NHI to work. If NHI works, your shares in Discovery are going to go down because people are going to start using public institutions. People are going to take their kids out of Kuro, and your shares in PSG are going to go down. That's what happens when you empower and uplift people and you tell them to grow their own food. They no longer need to buy from Pick and Pay, the Jewish Ackerman company. They don't need to buy from Woolies. They don't need to buy from the Afrikaans Shoprite, Ja Christo Visa, because they can feed themselves. And all these politicians, your Pravin Gordhan, your Fikile Mbalula, your Tito Mboweni, all these guys that have share portfolios in these companies, their share portfolios become worthless. Why would they want you to home educate your kids if they know they can make money from private education? Why would they endorse izangoma nezinyanga and encourage you to plant gum trees and grow your own lemons and your own ginger and use honey to self-medicate when they have shares in Aspen, when they have shares in Discovery, when they have shares in all these private healthcare companies? It doesn't make sense. But all of that is captured in your mind. And tomorrow, if black people come and they take over the economy, the West, the Forbes and the Bloomberg will devalue your economy. They will devalue it, and all of a sudden, the banks that you own, the mines that you own will be devalued, and they'll say, no, we don't want South African diamonds. And they'll wait till their people come in and they take over again. One of the things I've wanted to say in the past was, if ever black people successfully take over the economy and it becomes a black economy, white people will leave. They'll leave. White people are very intelligent, the ones at the top at least. They'll leave. And they'll find a way, just like they did with politics, to find black faces that will run the economy for them on their behalf. Patrice, Motsepe, Cyril, Ramaphosa, Gnane family, Maponya, whoever it is, you'll find that we have a black person running ShopRite and Woolies, and we've got black people running our banks, and you'll have Aliko Dangote like they do in Nigeria. But if you look at who owns the shares of Aliko, of the Dangote Industries, they're listed in London. So a lot of the people on the African continent are they're just a labor factory for shares that are owned overseas. 40% of the Johannesburg Stock Exchange is foreign owned. 40% is foreign owned. Another big chunk is owned by white people. When you buy shares, when you work for these companies, you're just labor for them. And when you buy a share, you're giving them money. A share is nothing more than a loan to a company. It's another way of fundraising for a company. And you say, I own a stake. Let's take my shares. Hey, easy equities. This is all stuff that's in the mind. One of the things I care about, Kanye West claims he's worth 6 to 10 billion US dollars. I don't care about that. I care about cash flow. How much cash did he make last year? He made 300 million US dollars in dividends. That's how much I think Kanye is worth. 300 million US dollars. If you earn a salary from your company that pays you R1 million a year, that's how much I think you're worth, R1 million a year. These formulae and these methodologies they use to calculate net worth, they will look at, oh, he makes R1 million a year and he's got a contract for over 10 years. So we will use various models, discounted cash flow model or the asset valuation model. And they'll say 1 million over 10 years. So conservatively, this guy's worth 10 million rand. We don't know. You'll get fired next year. You'll be retrenched. And now where's your 10 million? Where's your 10 million? And especially if your net worth is bought through debt. I can go and buy Cresta shopping mall tomorrow for R1 billion. But I get funding from the PIC or the IDC or the NEF. I owe them money. In the newspapers, young black boy, Penwell, buys Cresta shopping mall and everyone's there. Hey, Yamas, this black guy who owns. We've seen Sisa Ngebulana. And I don't know if it's Rebosis or the Billion Group. They're struggling because they've got so much debt in their company. All it takes is a COVID. It takes anchor tenants like Pick and Pay, ShopRite to pull out. And whatever I was making, maybe I was making 20 million rand a month from rent. Now I'm making 10 million, but I've got this debt I have to pay back. All of a sudden I'm bankrupt. And people are like, Baba, you're a billionaire. How can you be bankrupt? And your kids have been thrown out of... How, Baba? It's like, it's because you don't understand money and finances and how they flow. Christo Visa has spoken in an interview when he was worth 100 billion rand. He's like, these guys that look at these lists, they only look at the asset column. They never look at the liabilities. No one knows how much debt I have. All they see is, oh, the shares I have at ShopRite and at Pep and at Steinhoff are worth this much. That's his net worth. And he said, I know a lot of farmers in South Africa that are worth much more than me. But because their assets are not listed on a stock exchange, no one knows how much they make. No one cares. Eric Sampson has never been put on the rich list of this country because Max Steel is private. And he owned, I think, 70%, if not 100% of Max Steel. It was making 70 billion rand a year. But no one knew who he was. No one cared because it's not listed. So as far as you know, Motsepe is worth more than that guy. How much money gets into your pocket? So Motsepe is worth $3 billion. Great. He owns shares in this company. We don't know. Of those shares, when dividends gets declared, how much does he get? Does he earn a salary? That's what I want to know. What salary does he earn? Because at least that's money that comes into his pocket. Do they declare dividends every year? Of those dividends, how much does he get? That's what I want to know. Real assets and resources in the world will always remain land, natural resources like running water, like animals, whether it's domesticated animals like cows or wild animals like kudu. That's real wealth. That's stuff you can eat. You can't eat Bitcoin. You can't eat paper money. You can't eat asset valuations. Cyril Ramaphosa can sit with his billion rand valuation, but if ShopRite and Pick n Pay and Woolies close tomorrow, he won't eat. He's got no food. Unless if he's growing food in his yard and he can go pick tomatoes and potatoes. So that's why Julius was saying that these guys might be imposters. They might be fronts. And years later, you might find out that even these shares they claim to have might not even be theirs. They were given to them on condition. And if ever one day they are no longer serving those interests, just like a Julius Malema is no longer serving the ANC, just like maybe a Jacob Zuma is no longer sitting as a president of a country, the benefits fall away. They either devalue your shares or there's all this. If you ever study finance in depth, there's financial engineering that'll blow your socks off. Preferential shares, shares that vest upon this and that activity. Elon Musk, when he bought into Tesla, he didn't found Tesla, he bought into Tesla. One of the agreements was that he's only going to earn certain dividends or get certain shares once the company gets to a certain valuation. So his whole job is to be a hype man. Like what DJ Sbu, oi, oi. Tesla, Baba, tengi Tesla, Baba. If you can get it to this valuation, then we'll give you this chunk of shares. People don't know that Elon Musk doesn't earn a salary. The guy lives on dividends when they declare them. People don't know how dividends work and who gets to get dividends and how. And so there's a lot of things that people are still missing out on. The Motsepe Foundation, which keeps donating money, is that his money? Is it money that is taken from certain CSI budgets and that is being used to legally avoid tax? So he doesn't mind. Bringing Barcelona to South Africa, was that a tax move? He sold rights to air that game and he made money from it. Was that a financial move? And who was making the money? Was he making money? Was Barcelona as a club making money? Were there certain people behind the scenes that were making money and he was just the face? Global citizens. Who made the money? Where did it go? What's happening? We saw Beyonce come and go and then what? We're still poor. Where's the global citizen money? Where's the global citizen hype? There's a lot of questions people don't ask, and I've always said, please follow the money. And please open your mind up, and please understand propaganda and psychological engineering. There's so much that you don't know. That's why I always say I'm just the chimpanzee. When you remove all the layers that human beings have put on us, I'm just the chimpanzee. I don't need clothes. I don't need a shop. I don't need money. I just need to be able to source food, whether I'm hunting it or I'm picking it off a tree. If I can plant it, that's even great. Can I protect myself through my hands? Can I get a weapon like a stick? Can I get a gun to shoot someone? Can I move around? And then do I have the power as this chimpanzee to begin convincing other people that I'm of value so that they can let me into their home, so that they can pay me consultation fees, so that they can give me a job, so that they can give me certain shares, so that they can vote for me and I have power over them. But ultimately, I'm just a chimp. I'm just a chimpanzee. But I'm penal, I'm God, I'm leader of all penalists, and I'm trying to find people whose minds I can colonize so that we can live a better life. I'll stop this video here. I think I've spoken for too much. Have a great Friday. Stay blessed. Work really, really hard. And always focus on the most important things in life. Good luck to Julius Malema in his court case. Let's enjoy the show. At the end of the day, we're all going to die. So enjoy the show and have a great time. Cheers.